I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought and died just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to Season 35, Episode 14 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. My name is Kimmy,
I'm Pooja.
I'm Riley.
and everything's fine. In today's episode...
You look like you're gonna cough and like make a. I'm Riley. More.
I was. My body was delayed. I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. I haven't... No, there's no other one.
But not just a regular, it looked like you were doing a cough aside, like you were gonna make a silly joke about us.
Yeah, it was just... I'm fine. I'm a professional. It's good. I actually have friends here this week. I'm very excited.
Yay!
Yay! In today's episode, Wes from Indianapolis replies to our discussion about RPGs as folk art. Steven from Serbia returns to the Happy Jacks family after many years away and shares a story of discovery. And then Dirk, rest in peace, we love Dirk. He was a member of our community for many years. We reach back in the archive and he asks about leading questions in games. Share with us your favorite game right now. We are plugging Indie Designers of the Month. Right now, with all the tariff troubles and stuff like that, indie games need as many shout-outs as possible. So write in. You can do that on the Discord and our mailbag channel at happyjacks.org/Discord, or you can do that through actual email at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. Tell us about your favorite indie game and pitch it to us. We'll read about it and share the love. Tell us, don't just tell us the game, but tell us why you love it and tell us about an experience that you've had playing it. And if you have a question, you can also write those in or topics for the show. Both those places. So do that, please. We could use some emails, please. please, pretty please. Please.
But for real.
For real. For real, please. But it's been really neat. We've had a couple people come back in from the cold and join the Discord and start commenting on the YouTube channel again and oh, you guys are still here. It's yeah, we're still here. So, yeah, welcome back, friends.
We've been here the whole time.
We've been here well, not here, but existing. We have a new studio now, but I guess it's not new to us, but
we've been here
in
the ether.
In the ether.
Yeah.
The ether.
In the zeitgeist.
Yes, exactly. Very good. All right, announcements. Our next game days is going to be on May 24th. It's fun, safe, and free. The last one had 9 different games of all different types, and people just had a blast playing them. Everything from Escape from Dino Island to I think that there was a World of Darkness game, and someone else ran D&D. I don't know. There was a lot of a huge variety of games. And yeah, so you can join. You can sign up to run or play at happyjacks.org/Discord. If you are new to the community, you do have to chat and participate a little bit in the community before you're allowed to run a game. It doesn't take very long, just a day or two of chatting with people on the Discord, you'll be fine. But you can join games immediately. So we just want to make sure people are active and there before they're in charge of running games. And all games are required to use specific safety tools, and you can read all about that on the Discord. All right. Indie Designer of the Month, my very good friend Jess. She's amazing. From Wannabe Games. I told a story last week about how she was really excited after we started talking about her. A bunch of people followed her itch.io page and even bought some stuff. And she was like, thanks so much. So it's great to know that us talking about indie designers actually helps. So let's continue.
And also, you following and buying the Indie Designer of the Month games is a felt impact.
Absolutely. Especially when you buy PDFs that don't require expensive tariffs. You can find
And that you can own, and you are not leasing from some giant corporation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you can find her work at wannabegames.itch.io or by searching for them at DriveThruRPG. And you can also find her on, I still haven't asked her how to pronounce this, Jawska. Jawska at Blue Sky.
Jawska.
Yeah, I don't know. At some point, she's going to be you mispronounced my at every single week for a month. And I think she'll be amazing.
As long as it's in different ways.
Then say it to us phonetically.
Yeah.
Jess.
Jawska. I don't know. I'll find a different way. I guess it's the end of the month.
It's
So
Jalska.
yeah. Today's product we're talking about is This Is How. This Is How is a game about two rivals falling in love as they fight a war throughout the threads of time. In this game, you and a partner will thwart each other's missions and write flirtatious letters as you impossibly, dangerously fall in love. It is loosely based on the novella This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone.
Loosely.
Yeah.
Which
Maybe.
also means that you are required, legally required, to play this game queer.
It's loosely inspired by, in much the way that Nosferatu was loosely inspired by Dracula.
Yeah. And it is available for $1 at wannabegames.itch.io. So I feel like we should all just go buy it just because.
Yes.
We dunked on it for silliness, but it does sound like a fun game to play. And if you like that book, I think it would be a very fun game to play. And I'm a sucker for time travel, so.
I mean, I feel like if you just want a fun love story, because, like, even if you don't like the book necessarily, the novella's not for everyone, but, like, who doesn't want to be, like, a spy going across the threads of time with a grand romance that literally transcends the multiverse?
Yeah. Enemies to lovers. Like,
I'm curious about it if it's a two rival story. I'm curious if it's a GM-less game where you're just for two people, or if it's like for a GM with two other people. Because I feel like if it's only two people, it'd be a great game. If you're somebody who only has one person you want to play a game with, and you don't want to like have everyone playing a bunch of NPCs or whatever, you can just have this fun little.
Yeah, I think that's what I think it is. I think it's one of the kind of the letter writing games where you write a letter and you send it to the person and they write it back, and that kind of dictates.
Epistolary?
Yeah, without a GM.
Yeah,
So.
which is kind of how they wrote the book. So
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. It's definitely what my husband and I need between his script writing and my game writing. I know, let's play a game where we write stuff that isn't the stuff we're making money on.
hey, you know what? As a writer, I will push back on that because
Yeah.
I do think that sometimes getting the silly cobweb things out actually do help you write like the thing you need to write, and so like you should buy this game and do that.
And do that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like kind of a cute, like, hey, we have a kid and can't go out very often. This is like a cute little romantic, like, date night idea. We both write a letter, and oh, look at that. Okay.
You can play it over the course of like a few weeks too. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to like sit down and play it like in one sitting.
Exactly.
So there you go.
Super fun.
It does seem like the perfect play-by-post kind of situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Mailbag number 1. Someone else should read it.
I'll go for it. Why not? Dear Happy Jacks, I hope all is well with you. I am writing to chime in on the Our Actual Plays art discussion that occurred during Season 35, Episode 2. I'm an art school graduate, and my wife is an art history professor, so I'm approaching the topic with some appropriately nerdy knowledge. The term folk art was bandied about when making comparisons to TTRPG actual plays. Folk art is any art form that is self-taught, embodies tradition, and expresses some sort of social value. However, I believe that actual plays are more comparable to the form known as outsider art. It's occasionally and somewhat disparagingly known as peasant art, but the basic definition is any art created by those with no training in art and with no contact with the art world. As with all types of outsider art, there isn't a notable tradition or social value being expressed through actual play sessions. The format is only as old as social media. They're meant solely to entertain as they're in the format of a game, and there is no tangible connection to the greater world of arts. Pin. Folk art is different from fine art because of the standard/snobbery of art critics, but it is still part of the artistic tradition. It's also important to note that a professional level of craft is not a determiner of whether something is a form outsider art. Professionalism and high standards of quality certainly make an actual play more enjoyable for the viewer, but those standards don't comment on the artistic value of actual play itself. To put it another way, a really nice looking product doesn't automatically become a piece of art just because it's nice to look at. That falls under discussion about craft, not art. The future is quite open when it comes to the art of role-playing game actual plays, and any sort of interpretation is fair game. There is more that can be done outside of the framework of a Critical Role and Dimension 20 style format, and I think that's wonderful. All the best, West from Indianapolis. All right, I disagree that there is no what was the line that I
No tangible connection to the greater world. Or...
Yeah, I think I don't think I agree with that. I think that like I'm not against the idea of outsider art being a determinant for TTRPGs, and I wasn't here for the previous discussion, so I don't know what all was said then. But I do think that TTRPGs as an actual play, yes, that as a format is new. However, I do think that it's kind of a melding of art forms that already existed. I think it's a combination of improvisational theater and also like radio play type stuff. So like I think there is performance, there is like tangible, like there is a connection to the world of art because there is a connection to theater of the mind and also, like I said, improvisational theater. It's about improvisational theater over a microphone. Like that has existed throughout. Like yes, there's numbers being added to it. There's like a randomization that gives chaos elements to it. But at the end of the day, it's just improvisational radio theater basically, or dialogue.
And it goes back to like the prior tradition of storytelling.
Yes.
Like I think of things like the
Like role tradition.
like plays that have audience interactions. I went when I was a kid and saw a off-Broadway production of some play where like there was like a call and response section, there were other like, and it may not have affected the overall trajectory of the story all that much, but much in the same way as that actual plays, when they are streaming and like get content from the audience that affects the story, and maybe not the full arc, like, but also like adds details and all of that kind of stuff. Like those traditions are not coming solely out of just social media. It is like hearkening back to prior theatrical traditions.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think you pinned and I also was like, oh really? Is the idea that there isn't a social value being expressed through actual play sessions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, like, much like any form of art, that's not true. It's just not true. I think, especially nowadays, and especially with, like, shows like Happy Jacks. If you watch our actual plays, if you were watching, like, for example, the Spelljammer game that Jason is running right now, and you have, like, or any of our actual plays that make a point of platforming and also integrating queer stories and stories from people of color, like, that's social values. It may not be, like, on the same level of other things, but, like, fighting fantasy fascism is expressing a social value.
Yeah.
Especially today in the United States and also a lot of other countries around the world. But, like, and I'm not saying that, like, every actual play is at that same level of, like, intent or expression, but to say, like, actual plays as a whole, just like saying, like, this comes back to how people denigrate television. Because not all television is trying, or like not all movies. Like this is wild to me, because like if not every single movie is trying to make some deep statement about the world, then all movies are trash.
Yeah.
Or like no movies, and like I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like just because not every instance of a piece of media or a piece of art has the same level of intent, it does not mean that as a whole that form of media or art does not express social value or does not pull on traditions of art, whether intentionally with with a knowledge of the history or not. I do like the idea of and this is the first time I've heard it, but like the outsider art.
I think that, yeah, I think that it can be both, because I absolutely think that, like, even when you break down, not even just actual play, but the, like, the mechanics of a game can have social statements written into them. What a game focuses on. Is it about combat? Is it about romance? Is it about this? Is it about, you know, like conflict resolution? Or, you know, there's so many games out there now. We've talked about that, like, so many times in the last 14 years or whatever. But, like, even written into the mechanics of a game, there can be political and societal statements. And it's like, I don't know, there's so often, like, talking about movies that people are like, oh, this doesn't say anything. It's like, it's just about a teenage girl, like, and her crush. I'm like, that's an important story for people who've been, in situations like that, seeing someone go through something, whether it's a queer story, whether it's just, a teenage girl doing boring teenage girl stuff according to the rest of the world, or, whatever it is. Like, they're those people who glom onto that, and to them it is an important story. And I don't think, society at large might be like, oh, that's not important. I think that doesn't negate the fact that it is still social commentary and in there for a reason. I would agree it's definitely outsider art, not just because I think that sounds cool and badass.
Yeah.
But I do think also that there is notable tradition in RPGs because they are a spin-off of these worlds and like cyberpunk and fantasy and things like that. Like you can't get more traditional than like Tolkien in literature, just about. Like these things are part of literature, even though and are kind of the descendants of like novels and things like that have existed, and you can't really say it you can't really cut the line between those two things.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, in terms of the format being only as old as social media, like, okay, we are looking at social media approaching middle age. Social media has been around for over 30, 40 years. If you look back at the old, like, Prodigy forums
Like
where people were
stuff?
playing, like, LARPing via, like, bulletin board, as a form of actual play.
Yeah.
Which I think it was because you had people who were just consuming that as media, as well as the people who were performing and knew that it was for the public. That at some point we do have to let go of like the idea that social media is like for like 5 years old. I know it hurts to think about how old we are.
Yeah. Even the modern concept of social media, if we're thinking about it in terms of like Twitter and things like those are all also like, YouTube just hit 20 years old. Like YouTube is 20 years old. Like that is, and also like, there was comments here. You can hear the letter on the live stream, but people who are listening at home do. There was talk about like they named Critical Role and they mentioned 20 specifically, and like for better or for worse, those are kind of like the I wouldn't say the fourth, like there was actual plays before either show, but those were kind of like the standard bearer for the mainstreaming of this art form. And everybody involved in making those shows, like the first thing they say at the start of every Critical Role is a bunch of us nerdy ass voice actors sit around. They're all using their craft as voice actors to tell D&D type stories.
Yes.
And Dimension 20 comes out of College Humor. It was all a bunch of comedians and improv people from the LA comedy scene who got together and go, what if we did this as a show? And like comedy and clowning are very deep entrenched parts of art and culture. And we also mentioned like I started saying it, but then you went off on your gorgeous tangent. So I didn't want to interrupt you, as I'm saying. Like oral tradition is one of the absolute oldest art forms in human existence is oral tradition. Yeah. And I feel like this is just a continuing forward of that. And like you said, how much of art is like, I was inspired by this particular type of form and I want to tell stories like that. I mean, that's even like how kind of D&D came about, was people playing miniature war games were like, oh, I love Lord of the Rings and I really want to tell those kind of fantasy stories in this format. Yeah. And that's what that was. Like, so it's all these things that like, yeah, I don't mind the outsider art label, but I also don't shirk away the folk art labels. I do think there is some folk art there to it, but I also think that it's very possible for TTRPGs to become very corporate art. Like, I don't think that folk art is exclusive also, but yeah, well, I do think.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about last time is that folk art can become like corporate art.
Sure.
Like we talked about, because Clara and I were on the episode, folk music specifically as an example, and how like the Dropkick Murphys, they sang like traditional Irish music that was started in wartime or in pubs or whatever. And eventually, like when you get to the level you're singing it at an amphitheater to thousands of people, it's like, okay, it's still folk music, but it's now on a CD that's gone platinum. Like, it's just this weird mix. And like that was kind of our comparison to like, yes, like Dimension 20 and Critical Role are like the Dropkick Murphys are to folk music.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're playing Madison Square Garden, you're not folk, like you're not like small rinky-dink in operation anymore. But
Right.
yeah.
But it's still the same kind of
Yeah.
roots. And like what you were saying, I tend to, so at Gamma a few weeks ago, I got very drunk, which a bunch of other RPG like people from all over the world. And we were just
Like
talking.
a good artist. Though.
Like a good artist, like
Yes,
we did.
like you always do.
And and I have these weird, like, I do these like circles with people, and this is like, it's very weird, but I get drunk and I become like the preschool teacher that, okay, we're all sitting in a circle. What's the most important thing you've ever done in your life? And people, whatever reason, either hate it and walk away, or like it ends up with like 12 people.
You say preschool teacher, that also sounds like anyone who had weed in the 90s
Yeah.
in college.
Yes. But we're just like, so we're sitting like in this bar in Louisville, and we're all there, and it's like Soul Muppet Games and a bunch, and like MythWorks people, and all these people are there. And but like this is one of the things I was like we started talking about, was how TTRPGs are a continuation of people sitting in a circle and telling stories. This old tradition of around the fire, like, and like the oral tradition, like you were just saying, and how it's rooted in humanity, and we just kind of like constantly kind of come back to this, whether we're out camping and telling ghost stories, or like telling RPGs around a table. It's part of the innate storytelling nature of humans, and I don't think you can say then that it's not part of a notable tradition when it's literally
that has no value besides entertainment.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Well, and I also would disagree, like there were songs that like are very clear folk songs that were written specifically for entertainment purposes.
Sure, absolutely.
So there's like, okay, like there's this fine line of like, if it's written just for entertainment, it can be like there's so many layers of that.
Yeah.
It's also like the things that we consider fine art. And even if you look at things that no one would say are not art, like your traditions of like outside of performance, like no one is going to look at paintings or sculptures and say those are just meant to entertain. You are not art. Like there's this dichotomy of what and how we consume something and to how we value it.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I will go to bat for this for television because I've worked in television for so long and I see so much of this that like you have your prestige TV that tends to be stories that are told by older white men, centering the stories of older white men, and they are given more prestige and they are given more larger budgets and they are given a gravitas because of whatever it is, that stories of the teenage girls or whatever. And then it's that are not. The people of color, queer people, all of that are not given the same weight. They're not given the same money. They're not given the same marketing. And like you see it, I'm especially like up in arms about it right now because you have movies like Sinners came out and was the highest grossing original movie since 2020. In its first weekend. And Variety puts out an article about it that says, well, it grossed $60 million in its opening weekend, but since it cost $90 million to make, is that really good? And it's like,
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
A, yes, and B, wow, racist much? And C, like, as I hold up my fingers, 1, 2, and 3, whatever, it's fine. Like, it is about how these properties are viewed and how people are viewed when they are coming outside of like this monolith that white supremacy has created for us. Sorry, I'm getting so serious right now. But like,
especially in the context of Sinners, especially because of so much what that movie is about and what's happening in that movie, it's such an interesting like meta thing happening to the movie because of what's happening in the movie. And I would say a lot more about it, but I don't want to spoil things for people who haven't seen it yet. But if you haven't, please go see it because it is incredible, and I highly, 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 highly recommend seeing it, especially on the biggest screen you can. It was made for IMAX screens. If you have an IMAX 70mm near you, go see it there. I couldn't because the one near me was sold out even on a Monday night at 10:30. That's how good it's doing. So that's why I will push back on any flop talk about it, because I was like, I saw it on a Monday at 6:30 in Burbank, and it was packed at the theater I was at. So sorry.
No, don't apologize. I'm really excited about it, but like it is something I feel passionate about, that like stories that are outside of the mainstream, outside of like what we consider, what we have, especially like in the English speaking world, Western Europe, the United States, considered art, tend to be stories from a very specific demographic coming from a very specific tradition. And so like that is why I'm so passionate about pushing back on this like idea that there isn't a notable tradition or social value being expressed in actual play. Not so much as like I feel like it's also one of those things that like the basic definition of outsider art is art created by those with no training in and no contact with the art world. And I feel like that's a very different thing than saying outsider art doesn't have a notable tradition or social value. And like, so to me, like those two sentences back to back is like, what?
Yeah. Sorry, this is my standing. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm off the. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, and I just think like the whole idea of like we were talking before we recorded, even before we accidentally weren't recording. What we were recording. We were talking about books that we read recently, and I mentioned Juno Dawson's new book, and I compared it to Hexbreakers, a show we did on this network. And there's like, I'm sorry, like I would never look at Hexbreakers, and you mentioned even queer representation. I would never look at Hexbreakers and say that show was only existing to entertain and had no other. And like again, I don't think things that are existing only to entertain don't have value. But I also think that like it's so frustrating to hear something like that. We know that like we had times when that show ended where we kind of like sat afterward, like checked in on each other and things like that, because that moved us in such a way, and there was such a fascinating level of like introspection and storytelling, and Emily did such a great job. Emily, who is a literary novelist, relatively recently, check out Emily's new book, which is amazing. But like, yeah, sorry, the literary novelist sat here and told a story with us that dove deep into pain and trauma and trans representation and also cultural stakes on magic, that like non-white like Western views on magic and things like that. And it was this glorious little tapestry of all these things together. And I'm sorry, that was art. That was not just outsider art. That was art. Like, I'm not saying, not to dismiss outsider art as like just outsider, because it's very important. But like, yeah, to say that has no, like none of those things apply to that, in my opinion.
Well, and there's a very good friend of mine and someone, I don't know if she's like been open about why, but she told me, she's like, this is why I picked a name. In her transition, she listened to Hexbreakers.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, that's when I realized I needed to step up and I needed to pick a name and I needed to make this happen. And it was like huge. And I feel like there's this kind of pathway where things are outsider art. I'm just like pulling the terms from the email. Like I've heard them in different, where things are outsider art until they become folk art. And things are folk art until they become fine art. And it's just like, because things that like we now consider, amazing modern art. Like at the time people were like, this is ugly. What are you doing? Like it's like mocked sometimes.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff where it's like, oh, this is trash.
Yeah, until suddenly and suddenly everybody wants it. And you're like, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
You know, how many times have we heard about artists who are adored today, like who died in poverty and nobody liked any of their stuff. And then, so. Or
I also, while we're on the topic of movies that are about art and the intersection of art, the Bob Dylan movie, Complete Unknown, which came out this year. And if you've watched it, like so much of what the point of that movie is about when Dylan went folk at the Newport Folk, when Dylan went electric at the Newport Folk Festival. And there's like so much tension from the people who are putting this folk festival together, and Bob Dylan, who was pushing beyond what is considered folk at the time. And like those of us, like this is a story that I've like long known because I've been somewhat of a Dylan nerd, but like it's still watching it as a movie and seeing like the way it breaks down. So much of it is about that, about like we have built this little world of what this art is to us, and now you're coming along with a sledgehammer and smashing it and doing something different with it, and we don't know how to react to that. And it's fascinating because we can look at it now from the lens of knowing that Bob Dylan is recognized as one of like the greatest songwriters of like an entire generation and how much influence he had. And it's so fascinating to see at this point in time where he's considered this weird renegade who's doing something wrong and not. It's such a fascinating, like it's just a fascinating like treatise on what art is like, and that's what I think about when I think about things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quirky, it's unique, and it's definitely something still trying to find like its place in performance art and all different things. So
I will say, like, and I know there are a lot of conversations people have around, like, attempting to define where actual play is now and where it is going in the future and what its kind of place in the artistic spectrum is. But I will say, like, much like other forms of media and other forms of art, different actual plays and different companies are going to be doing different things with it. And I say caution against, but that just makes me sound like so pretentious. But like, I'm going to push back against attempting to say like, this is the only thing that it is, or this is the thing that all actual play is, because much like every other form of media in existence, that's just not true. We're all doing different things, and I feel like there are a lot of actual plays that you could say are like, or actual play companies that are in conversation with each other in that space. But like, also, we're not all just one homogenous group of people making stuff.
definitely not.
Yeah.
And so like, let's stop trying to treat actual play like it is like modern painting and more like it is a medium.
Yeah, like it has been absolutely fascinating to experience kind of the birth process of a new kind of medium. Like it seems weird, but like I remember when the first, like, there was like two different podcasts started doing actual plays. Because at the time, it started off, there were like 5 of us doing actual play, like, discussions. And then 2 of them tried recording their games and putting them out live. And I don't remember which one started it. I think RPPR was one of them, like the first ones. And they still do it too. But that was like the first time, and everyone was like, oh, no. And then like slowly, and then like we kind of chimed in and did that. And then people started like the streaming thing. And then like, I don't know, it's just been interesting to be experiencing and participating in something from the beginning and seeing how it's changed and seeing like, I don't know, people in chat were just saying like nobody in the 60s would believe Bob Dylan would win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Mike says that. And I, like, if you'd gone back 12 years and told us someday Madison Square Garden is going to have an actual play in it, we would have been like,
If you would say that
no
like
way.
that there will be a D&D off Broadway show, who would fucking believe you? No one.
Like imagine even thinking about the way that people show up at cons in cosplay about characters from TTRPGs that meant so much to them. Like, because think about coming out of the history of watching like Star Trek conventions and then other like nerdy like comic conventions that people will dress up like comic characters, movie characters. Now people do entire group like effort imply like immense cosplays based on characters from shows they like.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating to me. And also like you're seeing TTRPGs get adapted into other forms. Like you've seen comic books and stuff like that being into cartoons, not unlike a novel would be or a comic book might be. So it is very much mixed in with it. I think the big concern that I have with it right these days is that because TTRPG actual plays were so quickly monetized and turned into a commodity right away, then it turned to a thing where it was like, okay, now there's the really big ones, and then it felt like there wasn't space for anything else, which is why like I am so happy for how much indie voices are out there, where it's like, oh yeah, we're creating this. Most of us are creating it without the belief that we're ever going to become like rich off of it. Like we're creating it purely out of like the love of the form and the media, and what it inspires in us, which to me feels like the creation of art within a community. I don't know, most art, there's a phrase "starving artists" for a reason, and you nobody's going to be on Happy Jacks and getting rich off of what's on Happy Jacks, right? If anything, it might be making it harder to make a successful finance. But
No, it's fine.
yeah,
It's
but
fine.
no, I'm just saying
But also, please join
it's
our
an-
Patreon.
But I would say you put a lot of effort into the professionalism of this show at a point that is at quite an expense, as opposed to other shows that might be making a lot of money for them. It's like, well, we already have the resources, so we're just going to use them. But that's what I meant by that. But yeah, I just feel like the majority of people making actual play content, it is a labor of love. So that's why I think that there is definitely a huge element of artistic investment and involvement in all of it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too because, like other types of art, actual play is now influencing design. Because I have had countless conversations with other TTRPG designers about how games will play for actual play because it's such a big part of the industry now. It's like, oh, maybe if I put, exploding dice in it, it'll be more exciting when people watch it on actual plays. It's like an actual conversation I've had with people. And I'm just, and like, not me saying that because I'm always like, don't do that. I think I'm biased because I have a lot more actual play access than a lot of other designers.
Yeah.
Because I did this first and then started designing games. And a lot of people did the other way. Yeah, it's just, it's interesting. The kind of like circular, the way, art influences photography, like painting, influences photography, and photography influences film, and just, all these things. And then that influences fashion. Like, I feel like all these arts interconnect, and I feel like that just like reinforces how much they are like an art form, a folk art form, and not just like outside.
I thought for a second that you were going to do the Miranda Priestley breakdown of you're wearing a blue sweater because 5 years ago
Yes, 100%.
you found that at Kmart because the people in this room.
Yes.
And I will say, it's very much yes, people doing it and putting out their stuff and for the love of the form. But I will say, there's no shame in wanting to get paid.
No,
For
I would
your
like to
art.
get paid for my show for sure.
It's the dream. Get paid for your art. Have it be appreciated enough that you don't have to and there's no, to me, yes, once you get to a certain level and have to deal with other entities, then you can get into these things where how many compromises with my art am I making in order to make it commercially viable and all of that other stuff. But at the same time, just wanting to get paid and wanting to make a living doing what you love does not inherently make it less art.
No, for sure. And what I meant more about the money thing, and it was not so much about the intent or pursuit from the creators of it. It's more similar with podcasts. So when podcasts first became a thing, way back when you actually had to manually drag your podcast into your iPod to listen to on your iPod.
Oh, back in the day.
Yeah, it was very much kind of it felt like public access television, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was kind of this rise of the sort of corporate media podcasts, or podcasts that were getting deals or being bought out by groups or media giants. And then that bubble burst, and then that fell through. And the way people talk about it is oh, well, podcasts are a dying art form. And it's well, no, not really. Just because there's not major corporations putting a lot of money into podcasts doesn't mean podcasts are dying, because there are plenty of people who do podcasts who have an indie format, who get not unlike Happy Jacks, actually exactly like Happy Jacks, who are audience supported and have Patreons, or have oh, we have a subscriber feed. If you subscribe, you get to hear the special feed that we have, a lot of that kind of thing. Or Max Fun, the network that I'm on, is entirely listener supported. It's a co-op owned by its employees. And so it's just because the gimlets or the earwolves and those kind of media things have kind of gone belly up, it doesn't mean that podcasts as a form cease to exist. It just means that sorry, the most corporate version of them aren't as profitable to a terrible current part in our society where exponential growth is the only thing that people in any sort of media care about, instead of the quality of media being created.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant more, was the people are out there making the art, regardless of if it's the hottest commodity in business right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see in both cases of our actual plays or podcasts to be okay, this is a dead art form now because there's no money in it. And I don't think that's going to happen to either one because both are made from the passion of the people who are doing it.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So even if that happens, my dear friends, we will still be coming to your eyes or ears, whichever you prefer.
And both.
Yeah, and both, yes. Yeah, hopefully now you can see and hear us if you are watching the stream.
The funny thing is, normally when I get to the end of a rant like that, I jokingly go, let's take some calls. But we're actually on a show with letters.
Yeah.
So we need to do that.
We did. There was a very brief period where we had like a voicemail box set up where people could call in and we'd play like their like questions and they were talking. It was very interesting. It was short-lived.
Yeah, we kind of did it on Troubled Waters for a bit too, but it never quite fit into our format. So
It was just hard, and sometimes it was really grainy and hard to hear. And yeah,
I think it's hard when you have a show whose audience is not necessarily in the same time zones.
Yeah.
Because it really gets to be a thing like after a while you either are prioritizing people who are in the time zone if they're calling live, which are not always the mailboxes, of course, but still, it's like the interactive levels of it isn't always as good as you would like it to be. And yeah.
Yeah.
all right.
I can read
Mailbag number 2.
Part 1. Hello, Happy Jacks. Stephen from Serbia here. A longtime listener has returned.
Woo!
Speaking of. If you're still taking requests for reading accents, try a Russian one for... Nope.
Do
Nope.
you want to do the last one and I'll do my bad Russian accent?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, I should have pre-read this, obviously. Like, how to stop
I should have
Pooja.
warned you, but I was sort of mean. I was like, I wonder what'll happen.
I mean, I could try, but, like,
Mine's really bad, but it's funny.
we can pass off between part 1 and part 2.
Okay, perfect.
Reading in an accent, like I can do silly accents when I'm improvising or when but like actually reading something whole with an accent is very tough.
I discovered I could do one on an email from Happy Jacks. Actually, this is where I
Nice.
learned that I have a very bad moose and squirrel Russian accent, which is
Which is I think that's probably what Steven's asking for here. I don't think Steven's asking for the perfect.
no. I think that's why they're asking for this.
It was 1999.
It was 1999.
No,
My
no, I
country had just come out of another war. The last one before that was in 1991. That was the year I discovered PC gaming and a little IP called Diablo.
That's so dirty when you say it with a bad Russian accent. A little IP.
Little IP.
IP.
The RPG elements, stat allocation and builds, though simple, captivated my 12-year-old mind. Back then, my understanding of English was rudimentary. I played Diablo on my cousin's computer, since I didn't have one of my own. But I really wanted to play, so I asked myself, how can I experience Diablo without a PC or any other device? I had a bunch of toy figurines, large sheets of paper, pencils, markers, and a collection of dice from Jumb, a dice game. So I designed my own system with 4 stats. Strength, dexterity, vitality, and magic. And figured out a way to calculate the chance to hit. And like the sad little kid that I was, I played by myself at first. But then I slowly introduced the game to my friends. One by one, they joined in. I drew maps, placed monsters, and had my friends take turns conquering dungeons. Then, one day, an older friend of my cousin saw me drawing maps and asked what I was doing. I explained, and he said a sentence that would change everything. There's a game where everything you're making already exists. It's called Dungeons and Dragons. Jaw drop. It was advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Excited, I told my friends and we scrambled to find a way to get this game. But this was still a post-war period, and there was no internet. We searched shop after shop, but found nothing. Just as we were about to give up and return to making our own game, a friend showed up with a large yellow AD&D box. It had cardboard sheets with pre-made characters, miniatures, and strange mismatched dice. He had borrowed it from the only friendly local gaming store in our region.
Amazing! That was so good.
My face hurts.
That was pure joy.
That was amazing. Do you want to read the rest as in normal, or?
I mean, I feel like you have mentioned your Russian accent like 3 times now, and I'm not hearing.
I think we do need to
Well,
have
now
Russian
I don't
accent
want to
off.
because you said it so good.
No, I think we need a Russian accent off.
Okay.
I mean, Kimmy's gonna win.
I
and
don't
I'm fine
know
with
about
that.
Well, yeah, because yours was nowhere near Russian, so that's why. But yeah.
I mean, no one ever said that it had to be a good Russian.
No.
No, it's specifically. I
Is there
think
such
it's
thing
not
as a
supposed.
good Russian? No. I probably would have turned into Bartok from Anastasia after one.
Yeah. It's
Okay, yes, my Diablo game.
My Diablo game.
Oh, yes, boss, the Diablo game is coming.
Part 2. With little knowledge of English and only an old worn English to Serbian dictionary, we deciphered the arcane glyphs of the starter set. I can't do it. It's hard. It only went up to level 5 and came with 2 dungeon modules, which we played on the ground during 1 week and had access to the books. In that short time, we made sure to copy everything at the local copy shop before returning the set. And just like that, the game was on. From then on, and every day to this day, the title Forever GM has been etched onto my forehead. Keep in mind, when we started, I had no way to see how the game was actually played. The group was the group was the only one we knew of, and since I was oldest, I had to figure it all out. The rules were wrong. Chaos reigned, but we had fun. And over time, the games evolved and grew. From those first chaotic adventures to a world that took shape. One that I started to... Moose and squirrel. Okay. One that I still maintain and run to this day. It is the love child of my friends and my imaginations. A legacy we do return to whenever we reunite. It was sometime after 4th edition came out that I, although through some strange algorithm, stumbled upon the Happy Jacks podcast. It leveled up my games. Nowadays, RPGs are much more widespread, even here. From 2014 to 2020, a few of my friends and I ran a bi-monthly event at the same game store where we had started, before the unspeakable virus that shall remain nameless shut things down. And the event was gathering 50 people. Only 50 because the store physically couldn't hold more. I hope you enjoyed this tale. Stephen from Serbia.
Aww.
Obviously, Kimmy wins the Russian accent off having an actual Russian accent as opposed to whatever came out of my mouth.
I think I would have turned into the Count from Sesame Street over the course of it. Like, yes.
Oh, yes. 50 people.
I feel like, okay, this was already reacted to by the chat. So I want to put it out there. There was a stab in the heart to all indie game designers by the like, oh, what you're making already exists. I'm like, yes, but this was so sweet that he was making it. Like, I loved it. Like, I think it's cool that, like, I like that the story led from. Then I learned about D&D. I learned to play D&D, but the story didn't become. So now as someone who loves D&D to her soul, but is like, I'm glad the story didn't end with. So now I only play D&D ever, and it makes me happy all the time because I love it. That Steven began with creating an RPG game from scratch. Even thought of things like, oh, I need to have stats. Like, I know those stats probably
it's the
something in
way-
Diablo, but
Like, at this point, it was and then I figured out a way to calculate the chance to hit.
yeah,
I was like, yeah.
Super impressive.
yeah.
That's so funny.
I loved it so much.
Yeah, this is really fascinating to me. I love it. It's like I didn't come into to RPGs with D&D, so like for me, I don't have that like same like which like I like stories like this where they don't also because most people I know came in with D&D, whereas I didn't come to D&D until 5th edition because I was into games that were more about like storytelling than they were about like loot. So, but yeah, this is really fascinating. I love seeing this evolution of someone's entire life through role playing games, and and clearly somebody who has a very different cultural experience than I do, growing up in post-war Serbia, especially. And like, I love that there's like this. There still feels like this. Yeah, on the topic of RPGs being an art form, the fact that like this person I don't know, I feel like we just had a strange cultural handshake across like generations. Because I was like 1999, like I was about to graduate high school, so like I had spent my 90s with my friends in basements playing RPGs as well, and so like that was a pretty wild thing to be able to get to do. And like part of the reason why I was so drawn immediately to World of Darkness games is because I loved Buffy, and I was like, cool. Like it's not unlike being like, oh, I want to play Diablo, but I don't have access to the computer to play Diablo, so I'm gonna make my own Diablo at home. Is like such a lovely, charming, delightful thing. It's like there's this video you can probably find online of this. It's called Kane's Arcade, and it's this kid in like South LA who like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like built a cardboard arcade in his dad's like auto parts store. And like he built like all these arcade machines out of just random cardboard boxes that his dad had like for shipping items and stuff with on eBay. And like it's the whole thing about how he like he told his dad, I want to make a claw machine. His dad's like, well, why don't you? He say, I want to buy a claw machine. His dad's like, why don't you make a claw machine? And he found like a fish hook and like tape and like cut a hole in a box and like made a whole thing where you could pick up a thing and drop it into a box. And it's like, I love these stories of like people finding RPGs not through. I mean, eventually you got to AD&D, and that's great, and I'm glad that you had those memories, but I love that before you did that, the passion for this form was already there, and you built one from scratch. Like, Tony Stark built this game in a cave with a box of scraps! Like, it's just, I love it.
Yeah. I love the friendly local gaming store, too, that was like, okay, your kids definitely can't afford this, just borrow this.
Yes! Oh my god.
Great. And like, just think about the lives that were changed by that one amazing friendly local game store owner who lent them a starter set AD&D box. They made a bunch of copies of it,
and then just went to their local like FedEx and was like, "Okay, we're good."
Yeah. But then I love that they like still like supported them, and like years later they were running 50 people events for that same store. I just love everything about like the community built around this this hobby we love. It's silly and heartwarming.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And also, Stephen from Serbia, welcome back, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I love it so much.
We might have to like, it used to be a tradition where people would write in like random ass accents for us to read emails in. And yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and also like,
It was a little
what have I done?
Yeah.
What have I done? Yeah. This is on the internet now forever.
Forever. There's some really bad accents. The first email where we kind of discovered it, someone was like, oh, you said you can do accents. Like, do a Russian accent. And I would, like, drawn reading that email for whatever reason. And I forget what it was. It was like, asking for advice about a player. And the player was like, I don't even remember, but I remember it had, like, he was waving his fanboy penis around. So I'm like sitting there reading fanboy penis in Russian accent. Because I was complaining about this obnoxious player who was not literally doing that, obviously, but
Thank
like,
God.
Yeah, that feels like such a more charming phrase coming from a Russian accent, like
Really?
fanboy penis, waving around.
fanboy penis. Yeah.
I will say too, as a DM, with the caveat that I don't mean to caricature of ethnic accents in a way that would be extremely offensive. But I think the nice thing about being a DM in fantasy settings is, like, for example, if you're not great at doing a Russian accent, but you do a Russian accent and it's not quite good, that's okay, because that means that's what wood elves talk like in your world, whatever game you're playing. But it's like, hey, cool, you've just created a fake accent for the fantasy world that you're telling in. It's similar to one of my tricks for voicing NPCs is to think of a celebrity that I think they sound like and doing that voice, but I'm not a good impressionist, but it's okay, because I'm not, like, if nobody knows that I'm doing an impression of Kate Blanchett, but I know that, like, my, like, stuffy boss lady sounds like Kate Blanchett sounds in my head, it's like, cool, that's just a voice for that character now.
Good.
I mean, that's the big thing, is like being able to remember what you've decided on somebody to sound like. In further sessions.
Yes, oh my god.
That's the hardest part for me. And like, I feel like it's worth, if you're going to like attempt to do accents for your characters in your, and this is where like actual plays as art versus your home games with your friends is kind of like if you are going to like stream a game and do a bunch of accents, please, for crying out loud, like look up what they sound like and like do your best to be respectful of the cultures that you're pulling from. But also, sometimes you're just going to like, it doesn't always have to be an accent. It can just be a way of speaking
Yes.
that makes a big difference and gives you a lot about what the personality of the character is. Like, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on that. And like, I'm not saying that all accents are bad. Just mine.
Yeah.
Just mine.
I think sometimes accents, and I even as someone who just made a defense of bad accents in certain contexts, I do think sometimes accents can get a little tiresome and can be a little bit frustrating as a listener sometimes on things. So I think that like, and as someone who will quickly switch into it, I've been doing a streaming of Blood on the Blood on the Clock Tower. We've been calling it Blood on the Tabletop because a lot of tabletop players doing it. I do tend to switch into it because we're doing kind of a goofy version of it. So I do tend to pick an accent each time. I mean, they've all been very different. So like one was Scottish, and like one I did like a very like Southern, because I was one of the demons, but I was pretending to be the virgin, and so I was playing it the whole time like a very Southern. Like I'm just here to have. I believe in the Lord, and I am a faithful follower of the Lord, and like that was like so that like. It's so easy to switch into that like Southern Baptist caricature in that kind of setting. But yeah, if you're trying to tell a story that actually has some like depth or emotion and stuff like that to it, having something come in and be like, all right, let's go down to the thing. Like unless you're trying to get a laugh out of people, like that might be a little bit rough on the audience.
Yeah. There's a couple, like I feel like I was Russian in when Adam ran Monster of the Week. I think it was Monster of the Week. Yeah. Our Interpol X game.
Yes.
Like, it's not X-Files, but it's the other thing. Interpol X game. And I was Russian in that one. But it also, that's like when those like pre-game conversations matter because like nobody else had an accent or like was doing something. So it was like, and it wasn't moose and squirrely. I wasn't like kind of joking. So after a while it fit in, but it was if everyone, especially at the table, is doing it. The one accent I think I did pretty well, and I don't think it was like super great Irish, but the Interpol X also. Wait, no, Gene X. They both have X's. It's interesting. I was Irish, and that was like some of the most like intense romantic art role playing and storytelling that I've done at a table, and it was like a very intense campaign.
I still think about Riley.
Like, yeah, she was so close to like who I was as a person. And I just like, oh God, like why did I make this like folk musician, like indie person? And like I legit wrote so much fanfic for that game and like wrote songs and recorded them and like yeah, it was wild. But I don't know. I feel like that's also a thing. Like if there's way too many accents happening, you can have like war of the accents.
Yeah.
But if there's like
you start picking up each other's accents by accent,
oh my God, it's so hard. Yes.
I remember during Hexbreakers because I'd written Daphne as a British character.
Yeah.
But like I couldn't ever exactly nail which British dialect she was doing, and so like I struggle with it a lot and it became kind of some of the fun of the show was how different my voice might have sounded from week to week. But similarly, like when we did Doctor Who and I was playing the Doctor, I'm like, I refused to play the Doctor with a American accent.
Yeah.
But I was doing a very poor attempt at doing Jodie Whittaker's like northern accent, and it was like not quite there, but it was like part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I will say, speaking of Irish accents, I to this day, like I had a home game of D&D where I was playing a character who I just somehow whenever I was playing that character in that game, I tapped perfectly into that Black Irish, like the very like hard, not the hello, but the very like the kind of person that would be like in Peaky Blinders, something like that. And I've never to this day done such a good job with an accent, and it wasn't recorded for anybody, and it would never be heard by anybody, and I can't do it again now. And I don't. It's so frustrating because I played that every time we played that character. Whenever I would talk with her, I would just get right into it.
Yeah.
So good. And I've never been able to do it again since then.
Yeah.
I had to, when I was in college, I was a stage manager, and, you know, when you're in college and doing weird things, and sometimes it's your job as the stage manager to teach one of your actors how to do, like, a Dublin Irish accent based on, like, you know, and I was given, because we had we had somebody who was from the area, whatever, they had put together like a pronunciation guide sheet
Yeah.
for most of the common words that were in the play and all of this other stuff. And like, so I had to learn it in order to be able to teach it to this person who had a very specific region of Louisiana kind of accent. And to this day, it is like the opening monologue to that show is like imprinted in my brain in this kind of like because I had to say it so many times.
Yeah.
To teach. It's like, Damien came to our school halfway through the term. Like, in my brain forever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's just so funny. And it's just like things like that, like, where you just have them. You just have them forever.
Yeah. At the Renaissance Fair, I don't know if they still do it, but when I did the Renaissance Fair for like over a decade, you had to take one of their language classes, their accent classes every season. Didn't matter how long you've been doing it. Didn't matter if you could teach the class. Everybody had to take the level 1 refresher course every year. And Fair doesn't try and be accurate. They have like their own kind of accent dialect they're going for, and they've kind of made that choice so that it's consistent, or at least at the time. I have no idea what they do now, but that way it was like consistent across the Shire, so you didn't have some people with like super hyper accurate, and then these people were like very clearly Southern California. So it's like everyone was expected to kind of have these same sounds, and it was that same thing every year. You had to recite the same like little like cuts from Shakespeare and the same like prayer that we all, and all this stuff is just very interesting. We didn't recite the prayers like religious, but it had all the right vowels in it and the consonants, and it was something that was very like easy. So it's like, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And so it's like everyone could like just, and like I did not grow up religious, so I didn't know it until I went to Fair. Which everyone thought was wild. But it's just like one of the things that immediately, like even if I do go to some sort of church service now, I'm trying to say it like a normal person. Don't say it like you're going to Fair. Our Father who art in heaven. That's me. Super awkwardly.
It's just like some things you can't say anymore. Like, for years, many years. So I watched, like, it was a thing with my roommate and we had Midsummer Murder Nights. And we had Midsummer Murder Bingo. Luckily not with alcohol. But, like, but it would be, like, tea and murder. So we would have tea, we would have cookies, we would have Midsummer Murder. And so Barnaby always, like, left a scene and he would be like, bye! And then for like 10 years, I could no longer say bye like a normal human being. I said bye like DCI Barnaby, the original.
Yeah.
Not his cousin, who was also DCI Barnaby,
quite a
who
long
is
time,
still
actually.
on.
Yeah.
He's still the lead
Yeah.
on Midsummer Murders. I haven't gone back to it in a long time. I should,
Yeah,
because
not
now
regenerated yet to a new Barnaby yet.
but there are like people of color on it now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's good.
unlike the first 12 series.
Yeah. I can't remember what I was doing now. There was like a thing that I was doing where the accent was supposed to be vaguely European Isles, and there was a weird shift where, like, depending on when I was doing it, I would sound much more like Miss Cleo, and then I would go back to being, which is, that reminds me, because
Creepy.
Mike in the chat said that the accent shifted between Russian, Irish, and Jamaican. And also, the funny thing is, what we think of as an Irish accent a lot in America is Hollywood Irish.
Yeah.
To the point where one of the funniest stories I ever heard was about an Irish actor who went into an audition for a movie, and then when he left, they called his agent, and they were like, I thought you said he could do an Irish accent. Because he's from Ireland, but they wanted someone to do the very, like, leprechaun, like,
Yeah.
oh, welcome on in here, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. It's like, that's not what actual Irish people ever really sound like,
No.
and it's always very, like, exaggerated for film, and so it's funny that what we think of as that is also not accurate to the people who live in that world.
There's like a whole... I'm thinking about this because of lately in, like, bookish drama, because y'all know me. That talking about, like, accents and also words, and, like, when you're appropriating words from other languages, and especially, like, Western European, like, especially when you talk about, like, Welsh and Irish and Scottish and how people just really like mishmash all of those together. And they're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this is fair game because all these people are white. And it's like, actually, they're minority languages that are endangered.
Mhm.
And like, maybe just take a little bit more care when you're thinking about like what you're pulling from.
Mhm.
I did see in the chat that it's like, oh, I don't use like other parts of the world, but I use a bunch of regional dialects from the US.
Mhm.
And I really love that idea.
Yeah.
That it is that we have that kind of shorthand.
Mhm.
And in a lot of ways, like it just kind of bypasses some of the other things that can be harmful to the people at your table, or people like, this isn't an AP setting, right? Like harmful to your international audience if you are butchering their accents
Yeah.
versus like, I mean, we're America. We stole a bunch of stuff from other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just one of those things, like, especially when you talk about like Scottish accents and words, like the my hot take. You know, Scotland, full of bears, but no cows, famously, according to the new, like, Lady Macbeth book by Avery. I highly, like, you know, it's a anti-recommendation. Unless you really, really love some xenophobia and some gutting of the best Shakespearean villain in existence. But it is like, it's one of those things. But it is fun. Like, I think as Americans, we really, outside of mocking Southern accents, we don't think a lot about what regional dialects signify to us.
Well, also, I mean, I will say as a linguistic,
Or like Southern California surfer.
I was going to say specifically California, I think, doesn't think about it. I think a lot of the rest of the country does a lot more, but we get to make TV, so TV sounds like us, so we don't get confronted with it as often.
but I also think that America has, as a region, like as a continent, like you can see where accent drifted away. Like there's like it's the American accent is much more, even in last just generation alone, like weirdly, like you mentioned, like the Southern thing, weirdly people of a certain demographic in other parts of the country have slowly like started adding that drawl into their speaking, like almost like an affectation that then became a like standard. And then like someone mentioned in the chat that what the network standard is considered is more of a Midwestern. I'm from the Midwest, but I'm also a Midwesterner I'm from Ohio, and my dad grew up in Cleveland. My mom grew up in Appalachian area. And so like I grew up, even in the area where I lived, people would constantly ask me where I was originally from because I sounded like two different cities that were shoved together with very different ways of speaking.
Yeah.
Because Cleveland is almost exactly between Chicago and New York. And so you get a lot of Cleveland guys who, when you're talking to them, they sound like the Bear sketch from SNL, but just a little bit off because it's not quite Chicago.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Browns, yeah, Fred, the Browns are playing this weekend. Like that kind of thing. You hear the Browns are playing.
Yeah.
That
People
kind of
used
thing.
to ask me that all the time too,
Yeah.
but like mostly because I was brown.
But you can see like a corridor on the maps of like where accents start to fade away, and there's huge chunks of America where everybody does kind of have the same accent, but then you find these pockets like Minnesota where you have that little bit like that very like
Minnesota.
the Fargo-esque kind of thing that you get like in this, like, you know, kind of thing like that. And then you also get someone pointed out like in Boston, there's an upper class Boston accent. And everyone thinks of, you know, the very like the wicked smart Boston, but there's also like a very like almost like British, like old school British,
Yeah.
like, not current day British, but like colonial British level of accents. And I've actually read, this is fascinating, and I'm on a rabbit hole. I have read that American English sounds more accurate to what British people spoke in around the time when we were colonized than it does. Like it's funny because whenever you see like period pieces set in America and they're British colonists, they almost always have British accents because like, oh, they're British colonists, but it's actually no, the British Isles accents have happened because of like the time since then. It's such a weird, sorry. This is all like vague things that I remember from details, but I find fascinating.
Yeah.
But I realize it's not really what we're talking about, but yeah.
But no, it's really interesting too, because like even amongst the United States, like, as somebody mentioned, there are a lot of different Southern accents, and there really are. And when you're I'm from South Louisiana, and the regional accents of different parts, like, you can map out where somebody is from in the state.
Yeah.
And that's not just true of Louisiana, it's true of most states in the country. Like, because the specificity of, like, regional dialects, of, like, regional accents is so, like, in larger metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, it becomes much more dilute just because there are so many people here from so many different parts of the world. But when you, like, I mean, I guess we're now getting into a conversation about code switching, but, like, when I go home, it's a very different puja. It's a very different puja that's happening at home than it is in Los Angeles. But even so, like, I don't have a traditional, like, Baton Rouge accent because the way I grew up, like, my dad, none of us have figured out where he got his accent from. He sounds like nothing else in his family, in the region, whatever. And then my mom had her, like, specific mix based on her background and where she was, and now having been in the South for so long. And, like, I have always sounded a little bit more like television than, because, like, we live down in the middle of nowhere, and so I watched a lot of TV. And so, but then, you know, you slip into those different things, like, just, like, it's like having a really nice, like, very comfortable set of sweatpants. And you just put them back on, and you're like, yes, I can relax.
Well, and
now.
speaking of television, like, there was a whole era of TV and film where the accents being spoken in TV and film weren't real accents. They were completely created for TV and film. But then people later, like, you'll see people making a period piece set, like, in the 30s or 40s, 50s, and you'll see someone talking like, well, I say we should go down to the thing. It's like, that's not a way anyone actually ever spoke. That was an entirely invented accent for the Mid-Atlantic, if we think about it. It was completely invented to be kind of a mix of East Coast American and British combined. Yeah. And it's like, it's even in the first Star Wars movie, Princess Leia is speaking in that accent. It kind of gets softened as the films go on, but that's like, that was very much like that Katharine Hepburn way of speaking in films. But like, that wasn't, like, it's such a fascinating, like, people were trained to talk in this accent that wasn't real.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how it changes too, because my sister was here for my daughter's birthday party today, and she sat, like, my dad's from Oklahoma, so we had, like, a lot of, like, Oklahoma sounding. My grandmother was from there, all that stuff. So because I talk a lot more than she does, because I'm a teacher, I do podcast stuff like that, a lot of that I haven't kept. So she and I can have a conversation, even though we had identical experiences growing up through everything and through high school, which is longer ago now than I like to think about. But, and then we sound so incredibly different just from the divergence of our paths from high school. Even though we've both gone to college in Southern California, we've both, like, done different things. It's just very interesting how even that dichotomy changes things so drastically.
Yeah, and even find, like, the way certain words you use change depending on if you move to another area. Like, I now say soda, but I grew up saying pop. Like, you know, and, like, once in a while I'll catch myself go, yeah, I'm gonna go grab a pop. Like, and it's like, where did that come from? Like, I haven't used that. It's such a weird, funny.
The fact that I say freeway now at all.
Yeah.
I have a friend who moved out of the country not long after college. We went to high school together, and I went to visit her, like, a decade after she had moved, and it was hilarious how much her accent had drifted.
Yeah.
And, like, it was so funny because she would talk about how weird it sounded, like, when Americans spoke, and I was just like, yep, because you do not, like, you've just been gone for so long, and your accent has, like, moved away. And I'm interested because, like, now she has moved to a different regional world, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what she sounds like now, because it's been a long time since we talked, like, on the phone or whatever. And just, it's just funny to me. Like, we all do that. It isn't a matter of, like, there is the pure accent, whatever. Like, we're all influenced by our regions. We're all influenced by the people that we are around in a lot of ways. That seems like that's just how humans are. Like, we will pick up phrases, we'll pick up accents, we'll pick up, like, terminology based on the people that we're around, because we're social creatures and we live in a society.
And before I know we're probably gonna move on to another question soon, but one thing I think is interesting with this conversation is that, going back to what you're saying about using different regional American dialects for things as people who live in America and are telling stories in America, I do think that there's like this default thing when we're telling fantasy stories, because of Tolkien and because of like other fantasy stories, that this does feel like a lot of fantasy ultimately gets defaulted as to being this like Western European tradition, which it really isn't. There's lots of fantasy that is not based in that tradition. And so I think that when you kind of
rest of the world.
Right, exactly. So like if you're like telling a fantasy story and you didn't grow up in Europe, like don't feel like you're obligated to make all your dwarves Scottish. You don't need to make all of your elves like Brit, like London British. Like, you know, like that's a thing that we're doing because other people before us did it. But if we're telling stories that are coming from our imaginations and are based on like how we view the world and we imagine the world, and also like the different cultures we come from, like making your characters and your world sound more like the world sounds like to you will allow you to kind of create more authentic characters and to create depth and things like that, as opposed to just being like, well, this is how I've heard these characters talk on TV. It's like, well, but those people did it that way because somebody else on TV did it. So it's always fascinating to me. Like, I think about the new AMC series of Interview with the Vampire, which I'd say new loosely because it's about to hit its third season, but like they made a huge change with that show of having Louis be set in Prohibition era New Orleans, as opposed to being from like 1600s France. And it's because like, yeah, it's easy to romanticize like a French vampire in the 1600s and like having that element to it, but there's something really sexy and also gothic and fun about having Louis be this black like club owner in Louisiana. And
So Louis was never from 1600 France.
Sorry, I meant Lestat. Sorry,
that's Lestat.
Yeah.
And Lestat in the show still does come
Louis
from
on the
France.
show was a plantation owner from the 1700s. That's what. Sorry, you're right. He was a slave owner from the 1700s. They changed him from being a slave owner to being a 20th century, early 20th century, like bootlegger and like club owner. And you're right. Sorry, I mixed up my Lestat and my. Yes, I apologize. Yes,
But still,
it's like taking this gothic story and making it a little bit more, not fully contemporary. Like, he's still a creature that died and lived a different century, but like reevaluated this character and what that means for the story and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Sorry.
And it means a huge difference because the life of a plantation owner in the era Louis was from still was very reminiscent of what was happening in France. Like, they were trying to copy it as best they could.
Yeah.
So it was a much more like direct line of Louis and Lestat recognizing and understanding the lifestyle, even if it was because they were mimicking that in the South so heavily at those times. Especially if you ever go like at like Monticello or something, they were like, "Look, we're French," and you're like, "You're not." No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, also just terrible people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it is like, I did think it was like
it totally
very important and like aware decision.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is the thing that like
Okay.
I could.
I'm
sorry.
I'm gonna let you. It's okay. I'm gonna let you finish your thought, but I just want to make sure we move on to the
I'm
last
gonna let
email.
you finish.
I'm gonna let you finish, but we've got to move on.
No,
to
it's fine.
Okay.
You know what? Y'all come find me on the Discord.
There you go.
I have an entire thing about aware, like when you cast people of color into these properties where they originally weren't, and doing that in a way that is aware of the
Yes.
optics of it and a way that is not aware
sure.
of what you were saying. And y'all can come find me there to hear it. But we do need to move on. It's been forever.
If we were still about like our TTRPGs, I'd 100% dive in, but
Yeah.
as
For
much
me,
as
I
I'd
was
love
mostly just trying to make a
show
shift to like, here's
Yes.
how you can tell a fantasy or gothic or a horror story with a different, and still kind of tell mostly the same story, but you can shift it into a more like connected cultural reference point.
Yes.
And that's what I was getting at with that. Yeah. Like I wrote a novel one time with orcs where I had orcs in my novel. It was a modern day setting, and so I treated orcs the way you would like Midwestern tourists coming into like obnoxious, like pushing people around, and like that's the idea. Like what is the defining aspect of this? How can I tell it in a way that actually connects more to how I see the world as opposed to just what a book told me a long time ago about the world?
All right. That was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Stephen from Serbia, for having us do a silly accent so that we had that amazing conversation
Yeah.
about accents.
I think it helped because Steven's thing wasn't like a question that we had to debate. It was just like a very
Amazing
heartwarming
story.
story.
Yes.
Like-
Which, like, also, like, just, aw.
All right, mailbag number 3 from the archive 2021. And just a heads up, this is from Dirk, we remember in our hearts very fondly. Dirk was an incredible member of our community. He has passed away, but I thought it was, I don't know, it's a great email, and I just thought, I don't know, when I opened it and like saw it was from him, remembering, I don't know, I wanted to include it still. So if that bothers you, I understand if you need to stop listening at this point. You probably already stopped listening, but just a heads up. But also, yeah. We love you, Dirk.
I'll read it, but I'm not gonna do an accent because I feel like that would be disrespectful considering the context we just had. I was like, oh, maybe I'll read the third one as an accent, and then when I remembered the context, it's like, maybe not this time.
Yeah, no.
All right. Dear Jackers of Happiness, it has been a while since I last wrote in, but I have a question where I'm interested in your take on it. When are leading questions okay as a tool to collaboratively create fiction, and when are they too railroady? The use of leading questions to create fiction is part and parcel of any Powered by the Apocalypse system, direct advice to do so usually contained in the GMing section. This is not, or less so, with more traditional RPGs. Let's take the case of Jan Alone, a hauler pilot with a shady past, in whatever is your favorite trad sci-fi system/setting. Jan Alone, I walk into the cantina. GM, you are greeted by the god-awful music of the alien orchestra over the din of drunken spacers arguing over card games. As the door closes behind you, you see the bounty hunter known as Griebers, and it looks like he's been waiting for you. Oh, here it is. Who have you pissed off in the past to the extent that they would hire bounty hunters? What did you do that pissed them off? Do you think this is too railroady? Is it unfairly dumping fiction creation on the player? Would you feel ambushed, or would you be enthusiastic to create this fiction? Bonus points, who shoots first? Yes, Dirk. Wherever you are, I also saw that reference. Yes. In my experience, when the player group is on board, this can add a lot of flavor to their characters and backstories, and more meaningful to the events at hand. The alternative would be for the GM to come up with something that fits his understanding of the player's backstory, and maybe doesn't fit all that well for the player. Or even to have this come entirely out of the blue, which would engage the player even less. The above example depends on the player already having indicated a shady past. I don't think it would work to put the same question to the upstanding librarian with no meddling of criminal underworld in her past. So can we distill some hints when such leading questions are an okay tool? So some suggestions that were here are use leading questions only for the player to add flavor, or use them to add meaningful content that may even come back and bite them. Use leading questions only during character creation to help flesh out backgrounds or throughout the game. Or is this something to discuss with your players beforehand, especially when playing more trad RPGs? What do you do when a player repeatedly nopes the questions? And any other thoughts or advice? Keep up the good work. Cheers, Dirk. P.S. Hydrate.
I mean, I don't, like, for the record, like, don't feel like that's too railroady at all, because it's not, in my opinion. Like, you've established there is the bounty hunter. The bounty hunter has been waiting for this character. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it's less railroady and more just, like, logical that there is a reason why the bounty hunter is waiting there for the player.
Yeah.
And it depends. In terms of ambushed or enthusiastic, like, how much of this is the player been not telegraphing, contributing ahead of time? Mm-hmm. Is this the thing that is, like, for all the players? Like, I think that this is a session 0 kind of conversation of, like, oh, I would like to have y'all contribute, like, when I ask questions or whatever, just so people aren't put so on the spot. Because I, for one, I just always feel, like, super, like, even if come up with a good answer in hindsight, in the moment, I feel like I'm doing shitty because I haven't had a chance to think about it.
Yeah.
So having like a heads up, like, hey, by the way, a thing's gonna come up about your backstory, just so you know.
Yeah.
That gives me time to really cement that in my mind. And so then when I'm in the moment and asked a question, I can say like, oh yes, I'm pulling back these things that I've already had a chance to think about, and therefore I feel prepared and I feel good about it. Rather than, oh god, I'm trying to come up with something and everybody's staring at me and I'm naked in front of the whole class.
Yeah, I agree. That's like a lot to pull it like instantaneously. Like some people, absolutely, some people can do it. I probably couldn't super well. Like I'd come up with something, but I feel like, yeah, having details like this in session 0, or at least like the boss, like, oh, you've worked for this boss previously or whatever, like in session 0 or backstory or whatever. So you could pull that and be like, what did you do that pissed them off? Like one question. I try and like limit when I pull questions all the time. It's like my like way of lazy GMing that really it gets people involved. And they always come up with more interesting things, which is why I would be bad at answering this question if someone put me on the spot. I try and like have like one question. And then if they tell me something, sometimes I'll do like a follow-up question. But it's a lot, like multiple questions like this, boom, boom, boom. You describe it, they're trying to take in the description, and then they're trying to process that, and then you're asking them what, who come up with a new NPC who's a powerful person who can have this influence and get this bounty hunter, and also why. There's just like so much processing and then like synthesizing of their own information there to come up with something interesting that I think a lot of people would freeze there. So it's not a bad technique, it's just you need to like make it smaller, make smaller amounts, like little bite size like questions.
Yeah.
I will say that this is kind of like, so the above example depends on the player already having a shady past, and it wouldn't work for an upstanding librarian with no meddling in the criminal underworld. And I'm like, I don't know if this is just being able like accept academia. To me, like going through the different thing and saying like, this is out of left field, but congratulations, you pissed off someone important and they have connections.
Yeah.
Like, and still not being a total surprise, but being something where it is like, you could have people like encourage your players to break out of thinking about things in like a super stereotypical way or fully trope-tastic way. Like if you have your like librarian take their glasses off and take the ponytail out, and then it turns out that like what it is they can't see because glasses, assistive devices. Yeah. But like it is one of those things that it can be fun and it can be a way to encourage your players to think a little bit outside of the box. But it's just one of those personal things where I'm like, please don't spring names at me at the last second.
I also feel like maybe like in this case example, like we said, it was already established this character had a shady past, so that kind of ties more into like what'd you do. So it already plays into how this player's probably been playing the character already. But I think like for the library example, if you just retooled the question a little bit and like pulled back the specifics a little bit, you might be able to get something out of a player. You might be like, why is a bounty hunter after you? And you don't have to say like, it doesn't have to be because you pissed them off. It can be like, what? So then the librarian can be like, oh, you know what? I found something in my research and I flagged it, and now somebody is after me. Like I was a whistleblower, and now somebody is trying to silence me. Or it can be like, yeah, somebody in academia wants my job, and they're trying to they're hiring someone to take me out. Like, and again, some people might not, even that level of like opening up a bit more might not be great, but that hopefully you're asking a question based on something from their backstory that explains why they are like that. But it does feel like I do love these kind of questions personally, both as a player and as a GM, but maybe not this specific of like write a whole back. Like I usually when I run one shots, I have a one shot that's loosely based on like kind of like this like almost like a pride event happening, and I always describe the crowds and what's happening, and I usually introduce each character when I'm playing that game by saying, where are you and why are you overwhelmed? And like it does give a little bit of like flavor of like, I'm not just saying like what's going on with you, I'm like, why are you overwhelmed? Because the reason why is I'm going to then corral them into a place where they're hiding, and that's where the quest kicks off at. But like that can be a very I've never had anybody say I don't know and they don't do it. They all can think of something. Like sometimes it's like, oh, I'm a bard and I just finished up my set and now a bunch of people are flirting with me and I'm trying to get out of the way of it, or something like that. Or I'm trying to like, you know, or someone's like, I'm introspective and I don't like this crowd and I want to get out of the way of it, so I duck into the store. Like all these things like that. But I also like have been in games where I remember we had a game I was playing where like in the very first session when we went to bed, the GM like was like, oh, you're having this dream and you're on the front of the boat and you look out of the ship and you see something. What is it? And I'm like, wait, you didn't tell me anything about preparing a dream. And like, but like the dream was clearly being developed to like be a portent to something else happening in the game. And I was like, I don't know what your game is going to do to my character, so I don't know how to tell you what my character imagines in this dream. But I wasn't given any like prompt as like, oh, it wasn't even like, oh, you're seeing something that your character deeply desires, or you're seeing your character's understanding of peace. It was just, you look out and you see a vision. What is it? I'm like, wait, what do you mean, what is it? You tell me what it is. I don't know. Like, this is a portent. Like, what are you talking about? So, like, that was the kind of thing where I was extremely frustrated. So I can see it from both sides of it. Because, like, I do love these kind of things. I love the way that, like, a lot of PBTA games, like, you sit around and you talk and, like, you establish who you are to each other based on what these questions were. And a lot of times you'll find information that you wouldn't have found before because of it. So
I really love, like, part of the reason why I love, like, PBTA character creation is because I go in knowing that I'm going to be asked these kinds of questions.
yeah.
So I can think about it ahead of time in that framework. And I think that that's the big difference. It's not that I necessarily need to have a heads up that this is the specific question that's going to be asked, but I need to know that, like, this is a thing that is on the table. So that I can consider it. Or, like, one of the things that Jason does that I really love is that, like, if we're going to have a moment come up that centers that spotlights our character and our character's backstory, he'll give us a heads up that, like, hey, this thing is coming up.
Yeah.
And it's not, like, fully fleshed out and all spoilers all the time. It's just like, hey, think about this. In my case, how much do you know about this thing? Maybe do 10 minutes of research into so you actually know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And like it's just that much heads up that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, cool. So like in the future, this thing is a thing that's on the table, allows me to have that enough mental preparation that, like, things have been percolating in the back of my mind that aren't necessarily, like, and maybe I'm not going to go with those at all. Maybe I'll, like, be able to pull something from the moment and incorporate that in, but I won't feel so back-footed on it.
Totally.
And I know that other people who just really only thrive. That's the other side of the ADHD, right? I feel like that I can only answer if I am on the spot and there's an imminent deadline. I know people like that too. They're like, please don't. Just let me, because I'm only going to be able to come up with something if I am forced to come up with it in the moment.
Yeah, fair.
I think also it's worth like the heads up doesn't have to be ahead of time necessarily, because this may not be a question that has to be answered in that moment. Like, they're in that cantina, they're after you. Maybe you don't know particularly why in that moment. It's just a bounty hunter who's after them. So they're like, okay, they attack you. Between now and next session, I want you to figure out what you did to piss someone off. So then you give them that time to think about it. And then they still have to deal with it in that moment, which is very realistic. Their character might be like, well, this person is now blasting at me. I wonder why. Like, there's, especially if they're an underhanded character, there's so many options to who could be angry at you, and things like that. So you can also, like, as an improv GM who doesn't necessarily plan ahead enough to, like, be like, you need to think about this before the session. Like, you can also give that thinking time and planning time between the moment it's happening, where you didn't know it was going to happen, but now it's happening, and then, like, the next session where those answers have to be found and resolved to weave into the plot.
And sorry, I was just gonna say, like, there's he had put in this, like, is this something to discuss with your players beforehand? Especially when playing more trad RPGs. And I feel like it is something that we've talked about where it's like, oh, yeah, when you're... Because you expect it going into PBTAs versus not expecting it when you go into necessarily D&D. I mean, I expect it because I've been playing games with Jason for however many years now. No one answer how many years. It's fine. It's fine.
More or less than their social media has discussed.
Well, I didn't know Jason back then, so... but, like, it is... But, yeah, when you have a player who repeatedly nopes the questions...
Stop asking those questions.
Yeah.
Except that they don't want to be in that situation and that they don't want to engage in that way.
Yeah.
Because, like, forcing somebody to do something that they don't want to do is not fun, and TTRPGs are supposed to be fun.
Yeah. Give those treats to the players who want them. And if there's one player who doesn't, that's okay.
Yeah.
If they're engaging in other ways, then they're having a good time and everyone else is. That's good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I would say, like, using the questions to add meaningful content that may even come back and bite them, that might be a player comfort level thing. But I think typically if players give you information that can come back and bite them, they want that information to come back and bite them. I think that, like, Jason one time said on the show to treat the player's character sheet as a wish list. And I also think that's the same thing with treating fun, interesting things from a player's backstory. Like, people don't write a whole backstory because they want it to be set in stone in an effort to affect anything ever again. Well, some people do, for sure, and those are frustrating players to play with. But if they're putting elements that are still loose ends, they want you as a DM or GM to come in and pull those threads a little bit. So it's like if somebody says, oh yeah, this notorious gangster is after me because I dropped my cargo at the first sign of trouble. It's like, well, clearly that person wants a very storyline where a bounty hunter takes that person and freezes them in carbonite and takes them off to a small cantina somewhere. Like, obviously, that's what they want to have happen. So why aren't you helping them have it happen? Yeah. Like, it just feels like that is a wish list for sure. And like the way that this plays out, I had a thought, I just lost it. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was yeah.
No, but it's good. I mean, and that's why, like, it's not impossible for the librarian to have a storyline where the bounty hunter's after them. Like, maybe that's on their wish list. Who knows? Maybe they have a rare tome that's been, that they're keeping safe with them at all times. Who knows? But, like, again, it's very likely they might not have anything like that on their character sheet. Who knows?
Yeah. Or maybe they've been playing this straight-laced, frumpy, not frumpy, prim and proper, so I mean, like, librarian the whole time, but they told you, as a GM, privately, that they have this sketchy thing in their background. And this is the moment where you get to ask them this question, and the whole table's like, why would a librarian be after Marion? And then you're like, oh, well, actually, she and a music salesman scammed an entire town into buying a boys band, and now she's on the run from a group of angry salespeople. Like, that kind of thing could be like something like, and everyone's like, wait, what? That's Marion's backstory? What? Yeah.
Exactly. I love that.
Right in River City?
Yep. Love it.
Yeah.
Yay!
So good.
I mean, think about, like, Firefly. Like, you don't know from the very beginning what happened with the Tams. Like, they're just, you have this, like, very rich doctor who is on the run from something and you don't know why, and then you find out because he has his sister in a stasis thing, and she was like rescued from somewhere, and that's a whole part of the plot. But originally he's just a buttoned up weird doctor guy who books travel on a spaceship, and then things get revealed. Sorry for spoiling Firefly. I apologize for those of you, because
No, but that's a good example of slowly like giving information. It's not done as much anymore, but it used to be where, like, everyone kind of read their backstories. Like, I remember one of my first D&D games, we all kind of, like, shared our full character backstory and stuff like that. And in some games, like a lot of people play PBTA without any secrets, so people will, like, read and stuff off, but they feel like there's still surprises that can happen. They're not secrets, they're surprises.
Yeah.
And I think that's
and I think treating it as a surprise rather than as a secret can, like, make a really big difference. Yeah. Like, I also love open table secrets.
Yeah. It's so much fun.
Where it is just, like, like, forcing the hand of players to be like...
Kiss. Sorry. That's my favorite example.
Make the Face is a very good example. But also just, like, you all know that this thing is happening because it is not a secret to the table.
Yeah.
Right. It's secrets to the characters.
But it is a secret to the characters.
Yes.
And like when you're in a table of like players who at a GM who can like do that and walk that line, then you can get some really fun moments where it's like, are they gonna fight? Nope. They're really not. Like, they think something is up. It is the wrong thing.
Yes.
It's absolutely the wrong thing. Or like just all kinds of fun stuff like that where you're all still collaboratively telling a story together as a table. But like everyone's got buy-in to it, and that just makes me feel so good. Whereas like table secrets I don't feel so good about. Like table secrets I'm just like, oh yeah, fine, whatever. This is like now it is the like you have to spend extra special time rather than trusting the rest of us.
That's exactly how I phrase it to my kid too. Like, secrets are bad, surprises are good. Like, if you're keeping something from someone because you're going to surprise them with it, that's an okay. If someone's telling you to keep something private just to keep it private, that's probably not good. So,
I remember when I played Thirsty Sword Lesbians, we were doing the leading questions at the beginning of the game, and one of them was like, I was playing I can't remember, I think it's the Infamous, but I was playing the playbook of the person who used to be considered one of the villains and is like trying to be better now and is like trying to recover. And so like one of the questions, like one of the other players was playing someone who their partner had cheated on them and like spurned them, and that's why they like fled and became on this pirate crew or whatever. Whereas like my character then, when we were talking, I was like, oh, my character is who your partner cheated on you with, and she doesn't know it. She doesn't, or she does, or maybe she does know, but you don't know it. And so everyone knew that going in, and that gave the other player the chance to occasionally just twist the knife, because my character definitely knew it, but theirs didn't. And at one point they were like, "Oh, you know, Nika, at least I know you would never do something like that to me." And like it was such like a very like innocent and naive way of phrasing it, and like, but like, because you're a great person, and it was so the other player messing with me at my character, but it like set up the story so that when I then finally told them what I did, then they were like furious at me, and it became a really fun storyline. But it was never a surprise to either one of us as players what had happened. But it like gave us it also gave us the ability in character to think about how each other would react to that event. And it still surprised me when like I told them that it was me, and they were like, well, before this trip is done, I'm going to kill you. And that was like a thing that happened, and that then I got to play the fun of like trying to stop this person who was a crew member from wanting to kill me. But like they got to decide how their character was going to react when I reveal it to them, as opposed to being in the moment and being like, I don't know what to do, can we talk about it next time or whatever. So
All right, are we good?
We're good.
All right.
Great.
Thank you for joining us for Season 35, Episode 14. Please support our amazing Indie Designer of the Month, Jess from Wannabe Games. I'm going to actually talk about their indie design game one more time real quick, since a lot of people missed it at the top who were watching live. So this week we were talking about This Is How. This Is How is a game about two rivals falling in love as they fight a war throughout the threads of time. In this game, you and your partner will thwart each other's missions, write flirtatious letters as you impossibly, dangerously fall in love. It's loosely based on the novella This Is How You Lose the Time War, and it is available for $1 at wannabegames.itch.io. So that was what we talked about at the top of the show, for those of you who missed it, because we weren't streaming live. If you've been here the whole time, you're awesome. And you're listening later. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. You can join their amazing ranks at happyjacks.org/Patreon. And yeah, thank you all for all your support. All our discussion today about art and being supported. Like, patrons, you're amazing. We love you. We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you. And my name is Kimmy. You can find me at Golden Lasso Girl on Blue Sky. And yeah, that's basically. Oh, and you can find my games at goldenlassogames.com.
Hi, I am Pooja. You can find me on the internet as Forgotten Saves. If you are listening live, it is Independent Bookstore Day. Go out and support your indie bookstores. Or if, like me, leaving the house is a thing that you do to come here, or, you know, go to work, you can go on Libro.fm or bookshop.org. and pick an indie bookstore to support and buy audiobooks or buy ebooks or buy physical copies of books from the comfort of your computer or other electronic device. And also relevant to my today activities, go out, look up a mutual aid in your society, in your community. And nowadays, especially with everything going on, the work that we can do locally has a massive impact on people's lives.
I agree with all that. I'm Riley, and you can find me on Blue Sky at rileysilverman.bisky.org and or whatever it is .com .bisky.social. Anyway, I'm Riley Silverman on Blue Sky. Whatever, figure it out from there. Y'all have the computers. You also can now officially purchase my first ever Doctor Who audiobook. Woo! Speaking of independent writers, I guess that's not independent, it's licensed, but anyway. I wrote a short Doctor Who audiobook. It is part of a box set called Tales from the Vortex that you can only buy digitally, so box set's a misnomer, but that's what we're calling it. It's through Big Finish Productions, which is a licensed Doctor Who audio provider, and it is part of a group called Tales from the Vortex. It's me and 6 other authors telling stories, and mine, unfortunately, is extremely relevant to the current situation in the world with trans people. It was not intended to be as relevant as it is for the week that it was released when I wrote it, but that is the way the cookie crumbles. Thank you, British Supreme Court, for... And by thank you, I mean that very sarcastically. But yeah, my story is called Dark Watches of California, and if anyone knows anything what happened in San Francisco in 1966, if you don't currently know it, listen to the episode and you'll find out more. But also, if you want to learn more about the Compton Cafeteria Riot, which is featured in my story, check out a documentary called Screaming Queens, and there are also a couple of different books and stories about it as well that are less sci-fi hero oriented. But yeah, thank you very much, and have a great rest of whatever.
Yeah. All right. Today we're going to leave you with a song called Longer Than Life by the world famous Poxy Boggards. You can find them at poxyboggards.com. And if you are in Southern California and want to go to the Southern California Renaissance Fair,
see for yourself that stew is fine.
Yeah, see for yourself that stew is fine. And also a bunch of other Ingies on stage now there. Joey's there. A bunch of other Stork is still on stage there.
Claire's there, right?
Yeah, Claire's there. That's right, Clara. Jesse, who used to do shows with us. There's a lot of Happy Jacks extended family performing on the road.
Now, Stu is going to seem like a scarecrow and not move, but he's just fine.
With his giant bass. Yes, but you can go see them at Southern California Renaissance Fair, the Poxy Boggards, the Merry Wives of Windsor, who still perform a bunch of songs I wrote. It's very expensive. Beer is very, very expensive to take cash. And have fun. And we will see you next week. Thank you all, and we'll leave you with the song. Bye.
Bye.
I'd rather have longer than life. I'll take a strong stout over strife. I'd prefer to I'd rather have longer than life. I'll take a strong stout over strife. I'd prefer to confer with a half pint of ale than live a long life till my private parts fail. For life without liquor is to no avail. So bring me lager for life.
I'd rather have whiskey than wealth, for riches bring thieves of great stealth. The wealthy drink wine and on pheasant they dine, but give me a keg and a fine turkey leg, and I'll eat, drink, and toast to your health.
I'd rather have lager than life. I'll take a strong stout over strife. I'd prefer to confer with a half pint of ale than live a long life till my private parts fail. For life without liquor is to no avail. So bring me lager for life.
I'd rather have beer than have fame, for drinking's a much safer game. Though bravery's a virtue that warfare can urge you, let other men fight while I drink every night and gain a less sober acclaim.
I'd rather have lager than life. I'll take a strong stout over strife. I'd prefer to confer with a half pint of ale than live a long life till my private parts fail. For life without liquor is to no avail. So bring me lager for life.
take good ale over girls. They titter and play with their curls. Young women complain and cause me great pain, but with ale as my mate, I'll thank God for my fate, while I give her a necklace of pearls.
I'd rather have lager than live. I'll take a strong stout over strive. I'd prefer to confer with a half pint of ale than live a long life till my private parts fail. For life without liquor is to no avail, so bring me lager for life. I'd rather have lager than live. I'll take a strong stout over strive. I'd prefer to confer with a half pint of ale than live a long life till my private parts fail. For life without liquor is to no avail, so bring me lager for life. I'd rather have lager